So good morning. What a nice combination, this idea of curiosity and then going for digital success. I think it's really a great combination that you made here, Hannes, and thanks to the President very much. Welcome, welcome for this first panel. And we thought that it's actually good to have a panel which is a bit reflective right to start with in the early morning from Tartu, from beautiful Tartu. I made a walk here this morning and I could enjoy the city and the sun. We are on the quest for digital success, and so we need to find our path towards the future. And it's in that very important that we also know where do we come from? What is it that we have in our backpack, so to say, and what are the choices that we make today? So this panel is called Learning from the Past, the Sweet and the Bitter Experiences, Growing Today and Winning Tomorrow. And I'm very pleased that we have this panel here, which is having representatives from the public and the private sector, from government, civil society, from companies, from Africa, Latin America, and Europe. And my intention is in kind of the 30 minutes that we have to go a bit deeper into these learnings from the past and the prospect, what this tells us for going towards the future. Now, in that, there are many things, as a matter of fact, that we have been also discussing here in past conferences over many years, and we can actually build upon, well, about 25 years of experience. EGA, the E-Governance Academy, exists now 22 years. This conference is in its 10th edition. So we, I think, also all bring a lot of experience along that we can mobilize. And I have decided that we will focus on a few aspects. How did the public services develop and what do we learn from that? What about partnerships? And I'm talking especially partnerships in government and with the private sector and with citizens. What about the international dimension? Because we are very much international here. I think it's really something to be proud of to have 67 countries present here. And then we will see what we can say about our expectations for the future. So let's start with public services. There have been many variations, you might say, of the delivery of public services over the past years, and some of us can indeed look back almost 20 years, for others it's more recent. And the question is how our thinking has changed. What did we learn? What were the good and the bad experiences, and why? And so let's see, Mercy, perhaps you can say a little bit about your experience and what did you kind of learn in public services over the past years?
Thank you very much. And I must say it's such a pleasure to be on this kind of platform having this discussion. I do recall just about 20 years ago, just around the time when I got into public service, when service was actually about having a piece of land and having a building where people can come to. So it was then very important that so long as this is a portfolio ministry, that the buildings are close to town, close to public transport, so that the public can access. Of course, those especially who are millennials and Gen Xs listening to this are probably thinking, what? Because it's no longer about a building, and it's no longer about access to transport in order to have access to a public building. The mind has shifted, and this is a 360-degree shift because today it's actually about achieving access to diverse government services in an easy manner, in an affordable manner. It's no longer about place, it's really about platform. And moving fast forward, just about 10 years ago, is when the government of Kenya started on the journey of government to citizen services available on a platform. And as of January last year, we had 397 services online. But with the entry of the fifth administration and the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the commitment in the manifesto was to avail 5,000 services by June 30th of last year. And that almost sounded like, is this going to happen? 5,000 in 6 months after 400 in 10 years? But you know, it really is possible. Where there's a will, there's a way, because on 30th of June, we had 5,087 services online. The launch was so successful, was so inspirational, that the head of state at that point indicated that his wish to dignify the citizen and to open citizen services to Kenyans, not just in country, but also in diaspora, was to upload 100% of those services online. Now, if that's not official pressure, I don't know what is. We now are at 18,000 services.
I think that's an impressive ambition and realization. Let's move to Heidi. Heidi, what's your take on what we learned about public services and where we are?
So, well, many thanks again for the invitation. It's a very pleasure for me coming from Chile to be here. And I will say that 20 years ago, I almost was studying in my public services in the education department. And by that time, there was the first time that you could do taxes. Well, now I'm at the Ministry of Finance, so you'll realize that taxes are very important for us. But that you could do taxes online. And that was very impressive by that time. And then I moved to the Social Development Ministry, and we have to get in a nice way or a better way to select the people that were the beneficiary of different social services. And by that time, every municipality, 345 municipalities, have to collect data in a format like a survey. But many years after that, we managed to have all administrative data in one place for each household. So that was 2015. So coming from a survey where everyone have to declare their own information, now we have a system, a social register of household, with 50 million of people that are part of that register. We are 90 million people, so that is a very huge coverage. And we can collect data from all different sources of administrative data, and we can show the citizen who they are, what the state is know about them, and they can also correct that information in order to be more certain.
And how come that you could do that jump, that huge jump that you did? What was the trigger?
I will say the main trigger was seeing the future at that time, because we didn't have an ID. We have an ID for every citizen, but not a digital ID.
Yeah.
So we have to put that on a web page with two types of codes. For the unique code that we were just starting, only 6% of the population used that ID code by 2015. And because of the pandemic, now 90% of the population have the digital ID code.
Impressive. Yep.
Because we couldn't go out anywhere, so everything have to be online.
What sometimes pandemics can be good for.
I will say the only good thing probably was that we transformed, digitalized much more faster and a faster way that it wasn't being with the pandemic.
Thank you. Justina, how is your take on this? You are coming from a completely different background.
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I would say that 20 years ago, I was about to go into college, putting that out there. But I remember an incident that happened to me, which was, at the end of my secondary education, my results came out on paper. They were mailed to my parents' address, and there was a mistake on my date of birth. Yeah, right. And this is just going back to what she said about the way that public service impacts even in education. And it was a big tussle trying to correct that. But I'm happy to say that today, government services have extended to education in my country. Young people no longer have to go through what I went through. They would simply buy a card, scratch it, put on a code, and they can download their national results right on time. I have also witnessed the transparency that improved public services has brought to a country like Nigeria. With all the challenges that we have, there is more accountability, even from the government side, because governance without trust is always a problem. Simple things like getting your passport registered, even the way that it impacts immigration and migration. There was avenue for corruption when these things were not done digitally, if you had to walk in. Some individuals could take advantage of situations. But today, if it's fully automated, you can track. You can see where the request is coming from and where it terminates, essentially through multiple layers of approval. Lastly, I would say that governance, digitization has made governance more relatable. In the past, government was something far-fetched or not close to you. You see them once in a while on TV or during political rallies. With social media now, you're following the conversation daily. My Minister of Innovation and Communication is going to be here later. There's something he does which I really find interesting, which is week in review. If you follow him anywhere on social media, you can basically tell everything that he has worked on week by week, and that improves the way that citizens are encouraged to engage with the government platforms that are available and understand the process that is ongoing.
Let's come back to that also when we talk about the partnership between citizens and government. Anna-Greta, coming from a company but also being in the supervisory board, what's your take on it? How do you look at it? The past.
First of all, congratulations on a high number of female participants in the panel. I think at least 10 years ago that was not very common, that still talking about the digitalization, we mostly had the technical people. But looking back, so I think in 20 years, it's very clear that Estonia has been successful in laying the strong foundation for the digital transformation. And this is based on two main things. So first of all, creating this open digital infrastructure, and secondly, public-private partnership. So in a way, creating a framework where the innovation can flourish. And working with the different institutions, different countries, I guess it's quite clear that public sector tends to be slow, but the main role, what they have is to create these clear rules or standards that the private sector can really innovate. And of course, digitalization is a journey, and you will learn many lessons. One of the largest or biggest lessons for Estonia was definitely when we launched our e-prescription solution back in 2010. And I guess none of the solution builders were really aware how the human behavior affects the information systems. And what happened was that when the elderly people got their pensions, they directly went to the pharmacy and bought out all the medicine. And of course, the system, in a way, couldn't handle the peak. So what we have to really always keep in mind that all the services, all the digital services need to be very citizen-centric and take into account the behavior. But one of the most important points that I want to make is actually that in 20 years, we have managed to grow a digitally minded generation. So people who are now creating different IT companies and startups that are driven by this digital mindset. And from my own experience, so growing up in Estonia, I would never imagine that I will end up being digitally transforming the forestry sector in Chile, bringing a lot of environmental benefits or impacts. So again, it's what I always say is that digitalization has much wider impact. So when we start building the systems, it's always about the cost efficiency, doing things much quicker, but in real life, it has much wider impact.
Yeah. I think I admire how you can go from the infrastructure to the humans to the longer-term mindset in society about innovation, which has also a lot to do with how we work together between government departments. And sometimes you hear actually that this is perhaps one of the most difficult things if you talk about partnerships within government itself, but also the relationship between government and citizens, the relationship to companies, which sometimes has also a bit of a mixed feeling because they are helpful, but they can also be dominant when they are, for example, the platforms that are very, very present. Do you see relationships, partnerships changing? Heidi, how do you look at that? What has been your experience?
Well, of course, I think we couldn't done everything that we have been done during the 20 years without the private sector. In Chile in 2003, we make a very big change in our procurement system. In fact, it was a system that was built on a website. and where all the private sectors that are the ones that sell different type of necessities for the public sector were part of that big platform. And now moving to the digitalized government procurement system and providing that procurement from the private sector is vital. Now we are, discussing how to move everything to a cloud.
Yeah.
But we need to have the standards and work together. What are the best way to accomplish that change of type of procurement? How we evaluate a good standards are part of the system.
You hear it more than once that actually standards, Anna-Greta also says it, and standards is a bit wider than technical standards. It's also the way you behave. It's really, really important. I guess it's also the level of expectation. Merci, do you also see that? Is that similarly happening in your environment?
Yes, I couldn't agree more, because even as we move on this journey of digital transformation, many issues arise. And this create many platforms for strategic partnerships and collaborations to address these issues in order to bring a full value. Starting off with the private and the public sector, it's important to have a close collaboration for the exchange of technical expertise in this journey and allow for skill exchange, because some of the issues that will arise are, for example, data privacy and data protection. These are issues that need a collaborative effect.
And if you say strategic, what do you mean by strategic partnership or strategic change? What is strategic here?
I think what's strategic here is a delicate balance to ensure that there is unlocking of value all round. For public good, data is availed and utilized to generate use cases for public good, and for the private sector that there is monetization and unlocking of financial value within this exchange.
Justina, is that also what you talk about when you say this relationship between government and citizens, transparency, accountability, etc.? Is that really kind of like a fundamental change or strategic change? And can you see it happening? Is it real?
Yes, it is real. It's really important. Everyone has a seat on the table. For a country like mine, where digital penetration is not as high as other regions, increasingly we're seeing government leaning backward to work with multiple stakeholders across different social and educational levels to get their inputs on product building and the way that the users are going to experience it in the end as services, because you cannot build services in isolation of the users. So we're seeing a lot more user centricity. We're seeing democratization of process to include citizens for their own input. We're seeing a lot more private sector intervention, right? Private sector sometimes, I don't know about Estonia, tend to move faster than government in getting things started. And so that collaboration and influence is increasingly so.
Yeah, and in that sense, this human centricity, is that possible to keep that up? There are so many changes, a lot of pressure on governments. Technology is moving very rapidly forward. Big tech is pushing hard. Can we keep humans in the center?
Yes, in fact, I think it should be retained as a very integral part of the digital journey, because remember, more and more the citizen is becoming more aware and is more exposed and is able to indicate what it is they use. So the era of participatory feedback is here, because the government has given in the phase 1. In the phase 2 is what can government give to the citizen. So feedback becomes very, very important.
Thank you. In the meantime, of course, as audience, you can also write your feedback online. Anna-Greta, in strategic partnerships, in partnering, you pointed in your last comments to innovation. How does that work to unlock innovation in that? Because to some extent, some people are saying, well, really, governments stay back, because you are not the best in innovation, don't get involved in that, let us do it. Citizens may have a completely different idea about innovation, yet, the pendulum sometimes swings backward, forward. What's your experience?
Well, I think there's a very important thing, the close dialogue between the stakeholders, and especially between the companies and the government before the procurement actually starts. So kind of together discuss what can be the future systems, how we can benefit companies to, in a way, to operate in a smooth environment, how to less spend time on some...
Do you have a concrete
whatever.
example for that?
Well, as a vice president of Estonian IT cluster, then our strategy is based on 3 pillars. So it's a smart government, smart economy, and smart people. And especially the smart economy, smart government is where we are constantly having a very close discussion with the Estonian government on all the levels. And I think that is also something which is a good example in a way that we want to avoid government to build this kind of silo systems. In a way, we always think that how the private sector can contribute. And of course, there's a lot of, we have to deal with the digital skills in a way that the public sector is a very smart let's say, orderer, or they know how to buy things and what they want to buy. And of course, how to incorporate, for example, the private SaaS as well to the governmental services. So it really goes beyond all the possible borders.
So that kind of brings it also to the question of, how does that relationship between citizens and government look like? And so is digital success, digital transformation of government, is that for citizens or by citizens? So what would you say? Is it more for or more by? I will ask everybody. Is it more for or by?
Definitely it's more for, and what we have to eliminate is complexity and the bureaucracy in the public services. So none of the citizens need to know what are the municipality level services or what are the federal level or national level. So it all has to be a citizen-centric and preferably proactive. So in a way, you don't need to run between and you don't need to navigate between the systems, but everything comes to you.
And Heidi, what would you say? For or by citizens?
For citizens, and we have been working a lot with our government lab to fertilize the user experience through the journey, going digitalized, because it's not the same having digitalized services than digitalize the same bureaucracy. So sometimes you need to do it differently. And coming to digitalized services, that means you need to ask people. We just have a wallet that people can have money to spend in certain businesses for food and beverages, and because of the increase in the inflation, especially in food. So what we did was to experiment with them. What will be the experience changes to having money, cash or cash transfer, to have a wallet where you can only use a debit card into the commerce. And we did a lot of changes because we were able to explore with them what will be the best way to do it.
Concrete example, Mercy, for citizens, by citizens. Do you also do these kind of things like citizen lab or citizen?
Yes, we do. It's for citizens because why were the services created? What's the why? Is so that the government to citizen service delivery can improve. So one of the emphases in building trust and confidence is to be able to actually anticipate what the citizen wants, get user feedback. For example, we had a very successful program which allowed farmers to be registered, and that way they had access to education on how to better methods of farming and distribution of materials. So it's for citizens.
I like these kind of concrete examples. Justina, do you have an optimistic view on that?
It is for citizens and increasingly journeying towards being by citizens. There's a current example which is in a state called Kwara in Nigeria, in the west of Nigeria. Lagos State is the major technology destination in Nigeria, known globally. But we find that there are other ecosystems that are springing up. And then a community of young developers came together and formed a hub by themselves. The Kwara State government got wind of this and has put together an innovation center and instituted it and legalized it. It is now part of the government system. And another third partnership came in. IHS Towers gave funding towards it. So the thing about collaboration is that there's shared responsibility as well. Yeah. The shared responsibility of resource in a way that is more efficient and hits the target.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, so these are also concrete examples that we see about this, how this relationship can work out, and certainly, I guess, a pointer for the future. Let's take a big picture view for a minute, and I'm talking about how digital transformation works internationally. So, of course, we are all here together and we collaborate, which is the positive side of international, but also all kind of other sides to international. Geopolitics comes into play, for example. You have to choose sides increasingly. Our different views on these new technologies, in particular AI, come into view, and it's not all happy harmony always. There are also conflicts. So, Anna-Greta, internationally, how do you look at that?
Well, definitely, I see that the cross-border services are the future. So in Latin or Africa, we are not talking about nationwide only, but really cross-border services, because people are moving between the countries. And there is a good example of NIS system in the Scandinavia, and I hope that this kind of cooperation will be more common in the future.
Yeah, Justina, I know you are concerned also or interested in AI and government. How do you look at the international aspect of that?
Well, there's a lot of conversations going on within blogs on the governance of AI. Currently, I know that the UK is collaborating with my country, Nigeria, to develop a governance framework for the use of AI, especially in the implementation of government services, because this is really important as we examine the subject of cybersecurity and threats. Yeah. It's a new and emerging reality for the world today, and the more we collaborate in developing sustainable solutions, the better. And I see that the adoption has already begun in my country for some of the recommendations that came out of that consortium, and it will continue increasingly so.
Bring that briefly back to Anna-Greta. I mean, if you hear that, do you feel we still have a choice in these kind of developments, like, for example, how the innovation around AI develops when we're talking about public services?
Well, I think this is something we cannot stop. We have to adapt, and we have to regulate. And I think one of the most important things here as well is to really understand that technology is like a strategic weapon in a way, yeah. And we have to be careful with that.
Yeah, yeah. It's not innocent in a certain sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Heidi, how do you look at that?
Yeah, I think for us it's very important to be part of the OECD because we can learn how other countries are doing with AI and some other things like digital identity, how we can cross border and have the same information, and how we protect personal data. I think that is also very important too.
And in your experience, because you also have a very strong economics background, is digital transformation of government also becoming a factor in being competitive internationally?
Of course, we are not having a very high productivity for many years, and we need to look how the digital transformation of government and in the whole ecosystem can make the business more productive and can inform investment in a shorter time, because now it's getting too long to have a good investment, and we are looking forward to have a more comprehensive administrative permission for all the private sector to invest in Chile, and especially taking into account not decrease the standard of environmental and so on, because we have a trade-off there, and we need to be aware of that.
I guess that's a strong point for the future. Mercy.
Absolutely. I think there are factors that unite all of us at the international stage. When I think of things like climate change, the kind of devastation that is being occasioned all around the world, and availability of technologies like AI that can be grown to serve humanity, I think there's a call for action so that we are able to all grow our various skills. In Africa, for example, the platform of the African Union becomes very important to have a common conversations on how we can grow this culture, grow the skills and expertise, and avail the data to enable us shape how we will move as a continent.
When I hear this, I think kind of, wow, like, you know, I got involved in this area over 20 years ago, and this was comparatively a very inward-oriented discussion. It was about how government could do better, but not at all this kind of wider dimension of how do we deal with the planet, how are we competitive, can technology be weaponized, are we confronted with that, what does it say about our democratic systems and whether they can survive in this world. So, okay, let's look forward. When we look at digital success for the future, just in a few words, if we would be together here in 5 years from now, and perhaps you can also write it up, what is it that you would like to see being realized in 5 years from now? That's not very far away. What should we be able to deliver? Anna-Greta, what do you want to see on stage here in 5 years from now as a success?
Well, I would like to see all the countries having digitally minded political leadership, because this is exactly where everything starts from.
Yeah.
And of course, talking about the cross-border cooperation, for that also the governments need to cooperate to really prioritize the digital agenda and in a way build the systems that is cross-border.
Yeah, so we can kind of measure that. We could see it happening. Yeah. Merci, it's your take.
I look forward in 5 years to a time when we will all have an ID that enables access to government services, not just in country, but as would be necessary elsewhere,
Wow.
and what that leverage would mean across the board.
How practical, yes. I mean, we should be able to test that.
Yeah.
Heidi?
Well, I see that the digital economy will be probably the path for many things, and we can work everywhere in the world and have kind of the same services, even if you move from one place to another. And of course, I think we need to always think that everything will be user-friendly.
Yeah.
Of course, our children are much more digitalized than we were, but I don't think that now, like in Chile, many times the grandmother need to ask his, a child or grandchildren to help her to do to go to the web page and do services. I believe that in 20 more years, or even in 2 more years, that thing need to be changed.
Yeah, and Justina, in that sense, so somehow I guess in the fork in the road that we have, we're not sure where we as humans will be, where we will be going. What is for your success in the future, in 5 years from now? And talk about what the role of people, humans, is.
Fantastic. I would like to see the more political will from leaders to drive the policies that are in place, right? She has mentioned that leadership is key. If the political will is in place, there will be access. If political will is in place, there will be more digital inclusion. She mentioned grandmas having grandkids perform simple tasks. It shouldn't be so. And this is not only in Africa. In a hotel in Copenhagen, a man in his 90s could not relate to the code, barcode scanner to order food, right? And it's a simple task for you and an IT, but everyone needs to be included. And this is possible if the user is in mind and top of mind when products are being built.
Very good. I think with this, actually, I think this is really a good perspective for the future, and we should, again, be able to tell honestly to ourselves in 5 years from now, did we do that or not? Did we move well on that path? So with that, I would like to conclude the panel. I think we talked about all kind of aspects here. Of course, it's short, but you see the richness. I mean, it's certainly much, much richer than it was 20 years ago. It's much more outward-oriented than 20 years ago. I think it's actually positively also much more about people than 20 years ago. It's a strategic, as you say, and the strategic is not only about the way we work together, but also the infrastructures that we have that enable us to establish that relationship between citizens and governments and to unlock innovation. And I think very positively, and that's what we can look forward to, is that I think everybody says, let's intensify international collaboration. So with that, let me thank the panel together with you. Thank you very much.